Growing up, the death of my favorite game series was an eerie thought that would creep onto me often. How many more Metal Gear Solid games can they make, I'd ask myself. If Miyamoto died, would The Legend of Zelda just end? If not, would it even be the same if he wasn't there to oversee it? Usually, I'd just brush these thoughts aside and hope that somehow these game series would just live on forever. But if we stop and think about it, I'm not so sure that'd be a good thing. This may sound unrelated at first, but let's take a look at Mickey Mouse. The dude's been around forever, but he's been spread so thin that it doesn't seem like he has a coherent identity. Rather, he's more of a lifeless puppet that Disney uses whenever and however they need him. That's fine and all, Nintendo's doing the same thing with Mario, but it raises the question, is this what we want to become of all of our favorite gaming heroes? In this video, I'm gonna bring to the surface these questions that I'm sure we've all had, and continue to think through whether or not a series should try to avoid its fate. So make sure to subscribe if you haven't already, because we're almost at 2K subs. So what are some things a game series can do to try to last forever? That, my friends, is a tough question, and if I knew the answer, I'd be a consultant for Nintendo or Sony. But we can still approach an answer by looking at other examples of media that seem to be immortal. Off the top of mind, two video game franchises that I think are going to stick around for a long time are League of Legends and Super Mario. These franchises have been around and will probably be around for a long time. But how? In the case of League of Legends, or in general games like Fortnite or Call of Duty, there's a clear common element that they all share: ranked online multiplayer. Online multiplayer, of course, has a unique way of keeping players tied to a game. The more time you spend on it, the better the rank you get, and the more respect you get from other players. But although online multiplayer seems like a potion for immortality, it comes with a cost, that being a sacrifice in story. Most players, myself included, don't play online games for their story. Rather, we play to just get an hour or two of cheap, quick fun. So, all things considered, online multiplayer is more of a gimmick than an actual solution. Now let's get back to Super Mario, which solves its problem of longevity a different way. As far as I can tell, the Super Mario franchise gets its long life from the fact that it's extremely modular. In other words, there's no overarching story across the Mario games, so you can pick up any Mario without having any idea about the rest of the games. Think about it this way. The new Donkey Kong game on the Switch 2 is highly anticipated, even though it's going to be many people's first time in the series. So the success of this game actually kinda relies on the fact that new players should just be able to jump into this game because it's so modular. Anyway, just based on the games that we've seen in the wild, two techniques that developers can use to make their series last long are to make the series modular so anyone can jump in at any time, or to add online multiplayer, which is a bit of a gimmick. Now let's shift focus and start analyzing the next type of media on the list: old cartoons. Now we mentioned Mickey Mouse already earlier in the video, but there are tons of other cartoons that you know off the top of your head are just around all the time, like the Looney Tunes or Popeyes. But what is it that makes these cartoons last so long? I'm sure you've guessed it by now, but it's because they have a target audience that never goes away: children. But just having children as your target audience is not enough. What these shows do really well is that not only can you jump into any episode in a modular fashion, but more importantly, each episode has a moral message embedded into it that a kid can go out and apply in the real world, like, picking on somebody your own size. So I think what we need to take away from these old cartoons is that stories that focus on moral questions tend to go a long way. All things considered, it seems like for a game series to last long, it has a few options. One is to make the barrier to entry very low. 2 is to embed moral lessons effectively into the story. And 3 is to add online multiplayer functionality. Looking at our options, they all seem kind of grim. It seems like to make a game last really long, you have to sacrifice the very essence of the game itself: its story. So far we've been talking about games that could go on forever, but now I want to talk about really successful game series that have ended, namely Metal Gear Solid. Metal Gear Solid has one of the greatest storylines in all of gaming. However, it's that same story, which follows the events of specific people in specific points of time, that bind the series to an inevitable end. But was Metal Gear Solid ending really a bad thing? Although the series ended, every time I think about it, I get this blast of positive emotion from all of the cool plot twists and fun gameplay that the series introduced. In terms of legacy, I have faith that we won't just forget that the Metal Gear Solid series existed. Its influence on the stealth game genre is immense, and the way that it embeds morality into its story is something that needs to be studied in all game design classes in the future. So, considering Metal Gear Solid has established a really strong legacy, a graceful death is probably exactly what the series needed. That said, now I want to talk about the elephant in the room. The whole reason I even conceived of this video is because I wanted to seriously think through the death of my favorite game series, The Legend of Zelda. Zelda is in an interesting position. It's a collection of games that are independent of each other, but that are indeed connected by an overarching timeline. So it's already set up for Nintendo to be able to make Zelda games indefinitely if they wanted. At the same time, the series has a legacy greater than that of Metal Gear's already, meaning that Nintendo also has the option to close the curtains whenever they want. So soon, maybe not in 2050 as my clickbait thumbnail suggests, Nintendo is going to have a decision to make. They can either make the series go on indefinitely, risking making games that can only hurt the series' reputation, or they can gracefully time the death of the series so that its strong legacy can live on forever. Given how this video has progressed, you can probably imagine where I stand. In my opinion, The Legend of Zelda should have a graceful end and not continue on like, say, Super Mario. Now, I don't mean it should end within the next 20 years. There's a bunch more stories I want fleshed out, and loops I want closed in the timeline before I can feel satisfied with the series ended. But once I and all of the fans are satisfied, I think The Legend is better off coming to an end. Of course, it hurts to say that, but who knows? Maybe the legendary stories told throughout the series can become something of real legend, maybe like the story of Robin Hood. I mean, just imagine the story of a kid who, when faced with the literal king of demons, takes out his sword instead of revealing information that would have hurt his friends. But I'm kind of sidetracking now. If you like this video, you're gonna love this one I made about why Link has courage of all powers. And if you stuck this far along, make sure to like and subscribe, because it'll really help my channel grow.